Any comments, questions?
No, that's great. I'm ready.
Okay. Mr. Reed.
Well, let's look at page 189. I think with the information that we have about the RFP, that the last paragraph on page 189, be it further resolved that the district shall within 20 days, I think that needs to somehow coincide with the action on the RFP. So it may need to read that the district shall within 20 days of acting on the RFP. So within 20 days of the date, 20 days of the RFP. Okay. Let's go. I'm starting at the bottom and working up. Let's go to whereas student voices are powerful and must be heard. I would prefer the word should be heard.
Where are you?
I'm on.
He's on the 1, 2, 3. He's on the
fourth paragraph. Yeah.
Fourth whereas.
The fourth whereas, yeah.
What did you say again?
Student voices are powerful and should be heard.
Student voices as opposed to must. And instead of must.
Yes.
Hey, it's what you all want.
Okay. Let's go to
you and Robert and Linda.
I mean, this is, like I said, this is the first time we've seen this. We didn't necessarily give direction for a resolution, so we're working through this just like y'all are. And I think that's the reason why I thought that the exercise that Ms. Griffin led us in that was so intense and so important would be important for this board to go through as a whole and then lead to this discussion so that you could all have the same experiences that we had. Now, let's look at the third paragraph. And I would say that the GIC recognizes that equity is key to success. It is important that we address the disparities as they relate to race, health, social justice, and education.
So what are you disagreeing with?
I think that, well, I think the COVID-19 is maybe irrelevant because we were talking about equity before, and we were talking about equity before the events of the last several months on the Black Lives Matter movement, and that is a political statement as it has been used. Not how it was initially started to be addressed, but as it's being used by some, it hits a button. But I think that the equity issue is key, and we are talking about equity. And I want to keep it focused on equity. And because we're talking about the entirety of the population as discussed in the whereas, that is...
In the second paragraph.
In the second paragraph, that is the scope of the board, is the totality of equity. Not only equity for students, but equity for parents, and equity for staff, and equity of budget, and equity between programs. And I think that all of that is captured very effectively in that second part of the third whereas, where it says, it is important that we address the disparities as they relate to race, health, social justice, and education. And I think that's the clean statement.
Okay. I would yield to Dr. Lopez. You all think I did this in isolation.
I know.
But it's okay, and I don't have a problem. The deal is Dr. Lopez made a comment about sensitivity. Listen, trustees, let me make myself clear, extremely clear. I just want us to get started.
Amen.
Okay, I just want us to get started. We've gone around this mountain too long. We never climbed up to the top. We didn't look over and look into whatever. And I'm just saying it's time to move forward. So I am not going to mix words as long as the intent and the important wording of the resolution, that we don't lose that. Dr. Lopez.
Once again, I follow to the will of the board, but I will say this for clarification. and I say it with pride, Black Lives Matter. And I don't mean it as a political statement. There is a movement, and I strongly believe that all lives matter, but all lives can't matter until we recognize that our black youth matter. And the way I equate it, and I'll be real quick, is if you have multiple children, and one child comes up to you and asks you, do I matter? With a lot of hurt in your heart. As a parent, you might say, of course you matter. And you turn to them and you say, why would you say that? And they're going to tell you why I feel that way. More than likely, as a parent, you don't turn around and say, well, all my kids matter, so get over it. Okay? You start reflecting on yourself and you start saying, what have I done inadvertently to make my child feel this way? All our children are different. Maybe you were that child growing up. Not you personally, but I'm just talking figuratively. So when we talk about these things and we start shying away from people saying, well, you know what, Black Lives Matter, but all lives matter, we all understand that. But whenever I have, and I have multiple children, if I have one child hurting and they feel like they're not fitting into my world for whatever reason, as a dad, you better believe I'm going to reach out and find out what's going on, because I love that child. And I feel the same way about our black community. I love my black community. They're hurting. I don't shy away from their voice being on this policy. I think their call to action is going to make us better people. It's going to make us more responsive to the needs that they have, like we never responded before, and the time is now. And the people here on this board prove time and time again that they're courageous. The people on this board always get to the right answer. And we could change the words, but I'm talking from a Hispanic male. And we have our own plight. But right now, that is second to what's going on, because if we can stop and be those empathetic people and really listen and answer those critical questions that for some reason have been systemically been part of our culture, then all of a sudden we're going to find ourselves addressing things that we've never addressed before. And it's not a calling anybody any names because you're responding to it. But, you know, I'm coming from a father that has a daughter with Down syndrome. Okay? And if she ever felt a certain way, that would break my heart. And if anything were ever to diminish any of her great experiences at school, that would break my heart, from other people on the way they act. And that is no different in my mind than what has happened to the black community over a period of time. And so that's why maybe we can change the verbiage, but I feel that this movement has called us to action with more urgency than before. And I feel that we should always call out the elephant in the room. And I feel that when we do, it's going to liberate us as a district. And we're not saying only a certain section matters. We're saying they do matter, and it's time we listen. That's just my point. And we could change it.
I think that if to use your words, our black youth, our black community, as a more specific statement of the overarching equity issue, because in the world today, in the media, in the discussion, in the evolution of what has been captured or taken over by from a true heartfelt emotional outcry to be incorporated into a movement with dogma that is in some cases anti-democratic. If you look at some of the dogma that is being produced, that it depending on who reads it, they get different signals. And I think that we can avoid that by being more descriptive as to what is important to our community, and that is the black community, that is our black youth. I don't want the impact and the importance of this and what we're about to go into being overshadowed and being blown out of proportion by 3 words. Well, the COVID-19.
I think you said, okay, so
That equity is key to success, and it is important to not only to our full district, but also to our black community and our black youth. So
and see,
we want to have this discussion. And
well, look, I'm loving it. I'm loving it because I'm gonna give all of you a 100 today, a 100 plus, because this is the beginning of courageous conversation. And I have to say, we have not been at this point before. So I welcome the exchange.
And I decided, because I know you so well, that I wasn't going to feel it and not say it.
And that's fine with me, because I wrestled with every paragraph here of trying to be inclusive. And that's the reason why I put our demographics in there. It would have been very easy to not put it in there at all. So, board members, in paragraph 3, are you all wanting to strike recognizes the COVID-19 pandemic and the Black Lives Matter movement? And I'm saying that so we can move forward in light of the fact that the RFP is on the street. Is that the pleasure of the board?
I think what we should probably do at this particular point is let, since we are going to make a vote on this today, if Mr. Reed would like to propose his vote or his
and put his changes in his motion,
in there, and we vote and see if it goes up or down.
Okay.
And then otherwise, then we'll come back and then we'll vote it as is written, or we'll vote it with possibly the change of the RFP at the bottom, like everybody. That I think that, to me, in my mind, that's the one positive change. It probably should, information that we need to have.
Okay.
And then we can have another. You can make a motion.
That's fine. That's fine.
You see what I'm saying?
I have a problem.
I think that's the reason the discussion is key and the engagement is key. And I think the wording is important, and that's the reason why I think that I originally stated that I thought the approval of this after discussion should move forward so we can more precisely do the wording and the semantics rather than doing it on the fly.
Let me say this to you, Mr. Reed, with all due respect. I did not know the RFP was on the street.
Yeah.
So I was doing this in isolation. But when you bring in a firm, they want to know what has your board committed to.
Yeah.
So we're getting ready to go on a 2-week break. And when we come back, I'm assuming that RFP is going to be back. So we can ask Ms. Hogan to whatever motion that has a change of words. And if that passes, that's what we do with the suggested changes.
Well, I'm going to go a step further because I did ask you to, in our phone conversation, to do this resolution, and I also asked Ms. Griffin because I felt like that we would have really good conversation if she were to lead the training, and would she consider that? And of course, that's when she talked about the heart and the hard work that was ahead, and I totally agree because Linda and I go back a long way, and I know where she comes from, and I know what she can lead, and I think that we would have great discussion where we need to take this equity assessment. So, I'm going to, okay, Mr. Sellers.
I just wanted to kind of chime in. I thank you, Dr. Lopez, for your statements. I think one of the things that we have to be careful of when we engage in this work is not to pare things down because we're uncomfortable. Because there's going to be uncomfortable conversations that we're going to have and that we're going to have. And so while I understand where you're coming from, Mr. Reed, I think I'm very much of the mindset that Ms. Griffin shared earlier, that we don't lose the intent and the sentiment of what this statement is saying. So whatever your motion is, I would encourage you to draft it if you feel like it needs to be changed along those lines. I mean, personally, I didn't see this as a political statement, as Dr. Lopez indicated, but I can see where you're coming from. But again, I think that we have to guard against being being apprehensive about having those uncomfortable conversations because it's going to happen. That's just inevitable. And so I just want us to make sure that we're prepared for that going forward as we have these discussions.
Mr. Johnson.
I mean, I guess I'm a little bit confused because it sounds like we're going to be presented with an amendment to the motion that's going to change the verbiage of this. And the reality of it is, the way I generally vote on something is when something comes before me, I take a look at it and determine am I up or down on that. Well, chances are I'd probably vote for this under either iteration of this. So, I mean, I would just like to see, and this is one of the things one of the reasons why I asked about the committee and such, is to have something that comes out and that we can just vote on one way or the other, as opposed to this kind of mismatch of what, cause I'm not sure what I'd be voting for right now. But I can tell you, I'd vote for all of them. I just don't know which one we're going to end up getting. And so it's not like there's two of them that are going to be presented in front of us and we're going to vote for one or the other. One's going to come up and then it's going to probably ultimately win because we don't have any problem with the language in any of it. And then that's that. And we never really get to the second one. And that's kind of my thought of how this is going to play out. So it's just kind of a process question.
Well, as president of this board, I think that we should go, like I said, I did ask Mrs. Griffin to write this resolution. The document has been presented to us, and I think that we as a board need to go ahead and vote as is. And if you decide you want to vote it down, then you can vote it down because of if it's wording or whatever the case may be. That's your prerogative. Because again, I don't even think that you just made that comment. Regardless of when we say down there the date of this resolution, we still don't have the RFP. It's still going to have to come before we can start any training anyway. Yeah. So we probably don't need to change that wording. So I think that we should probably go ahead and vote for this as is. The document has been presented very well. We've had good comment from Dr. Lopez. Ms. Griffin did give a good introduction about on the fence situation. That was a good analogy. And I think that we need to be respect that and take it as what is written here, and that we are going to be moving forward as a district. We're going to take giant steps, and we're going to prove it. Okay? And the proof is going to be in the pudding in this resolution. So I think that we should back each other here, and that we should move forward. Question.
I would just make two changes. One, I agree with Mr. Reed on 20 days from the acceptance of the RFP. Okay. I think that would make sense in that last paragraph on 189. I'm not sure I understand, and Ms. Griffin, maybe you could explain it, the relevance in this, what we want to get from this document of the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm not really sure. The rest I'm totally in agreement with, just that's the one thing I looked at, I said, what's that there for?
Because the COVID-19 has brought up all the disparities that is among race and health and education and social. That was the deal. Okay. But remember, as Dr. Lopez said, it's the call to action that the nation is going through. And usually that is just a point of reference for when you're trying to get, something done. But I'm not going to die on that paragraph, because I tell you what, if we begin this work with fidelity, not picking and choosing what we're going to accept from the data, you think the calendar is going to show you results? This is going to show you results along with that. Because for lack of a better word, and I don't want to be offensive, but what I want to say is children and parents and teachers are going to feel free. That's the only way I can say it. To accept and say what they think this district needs to do in changing. And some of you may not understand and think that doesn't exist, and I could spend 5 hours and you still wouldn't understand. But the point of the matter, like I said to you all so many times, we are all about our beliefs, our value systems, our education, our experiences, and our exposure. And that's what makes the total package. So when you're missing any pieces of that, you can't see one-to-one what I see. And praise God, I don't need another Linda Griffin in this room. Okay? It's the differences that make us better. If we can just look at this as positive, and so I'm done.
Any other comments or questions? Okay. So,
Mr. Beach.
yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay, Mr. Reed.
I would move that we accept the resolution for district-wide equity assessment in the Garland ISD with the following amendments. In the third whereas, it should read, Garland ISD recognizes that equity is necessary, especially for our black community and youth. It is important that we address the disparities as they relate to race, health, social justice, and education. Then the fourth whereas, that it should read, student voices are powerful and should be heard. And in the be it therefore resolved at the end of page 189 that the district shall, within 20 days after the approval of the RFP.
Okay.
The last one?
Come back again.
All right. The First Amendment would be in the third whereas. Whereas Garland ISD recognizes that equity is necessary, especially for our black community and youth. And then it would continue with it as it's printed. It is important that we address the disparities as they relate to race, health, social justice, and education. And whereas student voices are powerful and should be heard. And then in the last, be it therefore resolved that the district shall, within 20 days of the approval of the RFP, create a task force and provide required training in assisting the firm.
What are you guys going to do?
Because the approval of the RFP would establish the firm.
I second it.
Okay, we have a motion with some amendments to the resolution for equity assessment by Mr. Reed and a
Discussion.
second by Mrs. Griffin.
And I want to discuss something.
Any discussions?
Yes.
Ms. Griffin.
I want to say to Mr. Reed, a powerful editorial, because what you did not lose in the paragraph was our black students.
Yes.
So I commend you for that. And that's why I could say second on that.
And that,
it's the words that has, whatever the connotation is of the other words, but you made our black students more valuable in this than I had done. So basically, that's why I second it.
and so we give credit to Dr. Lopez because he used the words.
Okay, folks, you've got your new paddles there for thumbs up or thumbs down.
Comment?
Comments, Mr. Glick?
I imagine I will vote for this, but I don't like your changing the word must into should. Should means nothing. Doesn't mean a thing. Must means if there's a voice, you have to listen to it. Should means maybe next week, maybe next month, maybe next year, maybe next century. That's my only problem. Thank you, sir.
Do you accept? Oh, I'm not.
Mr. Reed, do you accept his?
I think that it's, in my mind, is significant, but it's not significant enough to stop the resolution. So I'll concede and go with must.
Thank you.
Okay. Once again, will you please read your? Well, let's get it right. Michelle, are you getting this
Michelle, do
down?
you have it?
Does everybody here understand
got
it? Is everybody okay with it now? Everybody knows what we're doing? Okay, I want to make sure that we have. So grab your paddles, folks. We're going to do a thumbs
But
up or a
Jamie
thumbs
doesn't
down.
have his paddle.
He can do a thumbs up. Okay, we have the resolution with the amendments presented by Mr. Reed and seconded by Mrs. Griffin. If could show approval, with lift your paddle. Thumbs up. Thumbs up. Boy, James. That passes 7-0. Very nice. Good. We're going in the right direction. That's good. I like that.
Thank you, trustees.
Thank you, Ms. Griffin.
I'm not going to miss the opportunity to say thank you.